Sleep here tonight, the highwayman suggested, and you can leave in the morning. I'll tell you about a trail I know that will lead you straight to your destination. Then his dagger leaped from his sheath and drove toward Mark's belt line in the fluid, swift motion of a swordsman's long thrust. Mark had been expecting it and jumped frantically back. Just below his ribs, the dagger blade came in, as though an icicle had been plunged into his flesh, bringing pain and the sensation of cold. He grabbed instinctively for the wound, holding both hands pressed against it as he dashed for the trees. His pursuer's boots were rattling the sticks of the unlit fire behind him. Something large whirred close by Mark's ear as he ran from the camp. It was not until the sounds of pursuit had died away behind his careening flight that he realized the object had been an axe. Blood leaked from between his fingers, and his tunic and the right leg of his trousers were soaked with it. And still he ran, even though he knew that he was leaving a trail of blood that would be all too easy to follow. Excerpt from The Devil in a Forest by Gene Wolfe. Hello, and welcome to episode 3 of I Am the Party. I am the party, and I am Paul, and it is nice to be speaking once again. This is the first episode that I'm recording since having officially kind of launched the podcast itself, and I'm trying not to be very self-conscious about it now that I know that it's actually real. People might actually listen and hear. And so if you're one of those people who's actually listening and hearing these words come from me, thank you. Thank you so much. It's very exciting, and I feel like I'm already learning quite a bit. The feedback that I've gotten from just kind of throwing my first 2 episodes out there has really helped me, I feel, do better, and already have remastered. I'm already a remasterer, but I've already remastered the first 2 episodes so that hopefully the effects and the benefit of this episode sounding better, if you listen to those first 2 episodes early on, you can go back and listen, and they are better now. More to come in the world of podcasting. And I do have an email address. I thought I should mention that. So if you have any questions or, I don't know, thoughts, critiques, comments, you can certainly reach me. And my email address is iamthepartypodcast, all one word, at gmail.com. I've also started to post on Bluesky, which is the only, really very much the only social media that I have any interest in posting to or participating on. I was never a Twitter guy in the first place, and I never will be at this point. But I am happy to say that Bluesky seems to be kind of like a fun thing to start to try to get into and to spread the good word. And so my Bluesky account is iamtheparty.bsky.social. Come follow me, and maybe I'll follow you. And anyways, you'll have an idea of when I post new episodes, which the schedule should be every Monday. The Devil in a Forest. Let's chat a little bit about that. Why did I choose that as the cold open? I will be starting to break into the actual adventure this week. The real deal game. I spent a couple episodes now talking about what I want to do, how I want to do things, and today we'll actually get into it. And I thought it would be nice to have this little reminder of kind of how granular you can get, I guess I would say, in describing action. One of the things that jumped out to me was the line, as though an icicle had been plunged into his flesh, bringing pain and the sensation of cold, referring to being stabbed by a dagger. I've never been stabbed by a dagger. Maybe I should consider myself lucky. It's one of those sensations, and being stabbed by a sword, pierced in the side by a spear, hacked in two by an axe. None of these things I'm familiar with. So what do? I go and look and read and try to learn. I have a collection of these little, very inexpensive, used, white-spined 60s, 70s, 80s pulp science fiction and fantasy stories. I don't know why I like them, but it's fun to have a collection of them. And so The Devil in a Forest is one of these. I think I'd like to read the back of it too now, just because it's fun. Deep in a forest wilderness lay a village so humble, so insignificant that only a handful of people knew it existed. Yet it was here that a mighty battle was waged in the endless struggle between good and evil. Led by fate into the timeless struggle were Wat, the savage and charming highwayman, Mother Clute, the cunningly cruel possessor of mysterious powers, Barrowman, the awesome spirit of a long-dead but still worshipped warrior. And there was Mark, not yet totally seduced by evil, not yet totally convinced by good. As he confronts his own conflicts, Mark forces each of us to explore our own vulnerability to evil. The devil in a forest is a fantasy about the reality that we all must face sometime in our lives. Wow, what a selling point. I think I bought this for about $2.75 at the half-price books. And it's just nice to have a bunch of these all sitting on my shelf, pull them down from time to time. I've tried reading some of them much better, some of them much worse. And it's fun to find these quirky little like novellas from very famous authors, like this one from Gene Wolfe. It's inspiring, the front matter, the cold open material, to think about as I'm going through a dungeon, as my characters are experiencing setbacks and tragedies and challenges that maybe they're not prepared for, trying to be more concrete and more visceral, using all the senses, that kind of a thing, to describe how they interact with the environment. I think that will be helpful for me personally to make my characters feel like they're really coming alive. So I would want to shift gears here and just review real quick. I know I talked a good deal about my characters last time in this squad of stewards that makes up my party, but just as a reference point, so I've got Sarge, they them pronouns, and they are careful and clever, and they have the sergeant role in my squad. I've got Sax, she, her pronouns, and she is quick and sneaky, and she is my skirmisher of the squad. I've got Talls, again, she, her pronouns, and she, being quick and flashy, is the mage of my squad. And then finally, I have Deadlock, he, him pronouns, and he is sneaky and clever, and my scout. Very lucky that my scout is sneaky and clever and not flashful and forceful. So those are my 4 characters, and what I want to do is test out my rules. That's really what this all is about. Is it's a test bed for how well my mechanics work, if I need to push it a little bit, develop further, give myself better resources, whatever that might be. The first adventure I wanted to start with is a Dungeon Crawl Classics adventure. I mentioned in earlier episodes that I have a lot of Dungeon Crawl Classics modules. I've actually ran a number of them for friends, and they're just really nice little concise standalone opportunities to play a game. And I chose this one. It's from Dungeon Crawl Classics Day 2023 booklet. It is The Rift of Seeping Night, the winner of the 2022 Mystery Map Contest. It's a level 1 adventure by, and I should learn not to even try to pronounce names because I'm terrible at that, but the adventure is by Jess Gabriel Cron and edited by Reverend Dak J. Ultimac. So that's pretty cool. I'm choosing Dungeon Crawl Classics as well because of the way that the modules work is that it gives me some, like if I was the GM, some read out loud material that I will read as part of my own play. And then my thought is I'm going to do the read out loud, give some reactions and some actions from my characters, narrate, think out loud how they would approach a scene, how they're going to kind of overcome whatever the challenge is of the room, and then I'll start to look into like the more description, the behind the scenes stuff that the GM only would have access to, and then see how that works, see if there's natural consequences, all that good stuff. Let's dig in. So, the Rift of Seeping Night. After responding to a dire summons from Solgren, elder druid of the peaceful city of Spire, you now find yourselves high among the Torith Mountains upon the mesa of a large sunny outcropping of rock where the city of Sphere sits on the threshold of Baltothum's peak. A tawny crowd of monks and townsfolk watch your approach with hushed anticipation. As you make your way up the large staircase toward the temple, you see a banner bearing the Spherian crest, an orange circle surrounded by 9 outwardly pointing triangles. Flying from the highest spherical turret as you approach Solgren, who sits upon a cushion in the temple gardens, smiling at you warmly. Welcome to Sphere, that which is closest to the sun. I will waste no time getting to the matter at hand. For hundreds of years our great immortal wizard Baltothum has dwelt in the peak north of our city. Our people have lived for centuries here in Sphere, under his protection, going about our quiet lives in deep solar contemplation and peaceful worship. However, a few years ago we have noticed disturbing changes in our studies. The nights have been beginning increasingly early, and the days increasingly late. Dark creatures have been seen swarming the night skies, and our people have been disappearing. Our crops are beginning to fail due to a lack of adequate sunlight. We believe that some terrible fate has befallen Baltothum deep in his outpost. Unfortunately, there are none among us who are of the skill and fortitude required for this task. This quest falls upon you alone, and if you do not succeed, we fear that his seeping darkness will one day cover the entirety of Aerith, to the doom of all. You must find what has happened to Baltothum, and if there is a way, drive back the night. Please, follow me. Solgren leads your party through the temple and out of a rear entrance to stand before a long, thin staircase ascending the mountain behind the city. Solgren speaks again, this time with a sense of finality in his voice. If you can find an end to this impending doom, I shall bestow upon each of you a rare and valuable Spherian sapphire. In addition to this reward, you may also bask in the knowledge that all things that live in this land will owe you an enormous debt of gratitude. With that, Solgren walks back to his meditation and leaves you to ascend. That's the intro. In the booklet, that's under the player start section, and that's all italicized. So again, if you're following along, if you find this adventure somewhere, the idea is that the italics text in the book, that's for the players to know by default. I'm the player in this situation, and so I'll read that out loud as if I was DMing and you were in the room with me, listener. I should also note there will be 100% spoilers. I intend to go through this entire adventure. I intend to go through future adventures just by going through it as if I was playing, sitting in the room with you and reading everything out loud to experience it in real time. We'll see. And I also am not going to try to pull any of my punches when it comes to damage and threats to my characters' lives. I don't have hit points exactly, but there is a general sense of how much damage maybe my characters have taken by how often and how low they've dropped their dice in their stats. So we have this scene. We're up in the mountains, the Torith Mountains. There's a isolated city sphere. I mentioned previously that the adventure setting itself I'm referring to as the Greater Eastern Wilds. There is a mountain side. We're barely east of the mountains, and we're up in the mountains already. And there's a vast land down below that stretches beyond what the eye can see. But right now we're facing east. We're facing west in the mountains that separate the Greater Eastern Wilds from the rest of the land. That being said, Sphere is one of these points of light. I mentioned that the Greater Eastern Wilds is a pretty isolated area, even from one settlement to the next. Sphere is one of these places. Coincidentally, they worship the light. They are like a sun cult. They are one of these places where, as stewards, my squad of characters wants to stabilize. They want to create a safe place for to maybe launch further adventures from. So helping these guys out might be a place for the stewards to get a foothold into the Greater Eastern Wilds, or to just expand their influence. The 4 stewards now have been led to large stairwell built into the mountain itself. So they climb that together, and eventually they reach this area, and we are trying to investigate what's going on with Baltothum. He is the immortal wizard. So we have two old men essentially that are leading this town. We have Solgren, the elder druid, who I guess is not immortal. I don't know. I don't know if druids are necessarily not immortal and wizards can be. or have to be. Anyways, we are left to our own devices from Solgren, and we begin now into the solar outpost of Baltothum. So this first area that we arrive at, it's called the Stone Foyer. The entrance to the outpost appears as a large foyer carved back deep into the ochre-hued rock face. 3 columns line either side of the vestibule. A depiction of the Spherian crest carved into the 2 centermost columns faces in toward the middle of the room. A large compass rose is etched in the wall opposite the entrance. All right, so I have some material here to work with for my characters to interact with. We have the 3 columns that are lined to either side of this vestibule. Depiction of the Spherian crest, and again, that's a triangles surrounding a circle, like the sun. Those crests are carved into the 2 innermost column faces that are facing in towards the middle of the room. There's this large compass that's etched into the wall opposite the entrance. We don't really have an entrance, though. It looks like I got to break my way into Baltothum's outpost here. I think what I'm going to be doing, out of the 4 characters, Sarge is probably hanging back a little bit, trying to take in the scene. So I'm not going to roll anything for Sarge. I think they are just trying to get a sense of the surroundings and be like tactically aware. So perhaps they have a hand on the hilt of their longsword that's kept at their hip. We'll see if they need to draw that at any point. I'm sure at some point, but we'll see if the doors themselves are a dangerous place. And then we have, we have Talls, who's a mage. Mages tend to be clever. It's hard to tell right now. Maybe there's something magical to do with this large compass rose that's etched in the wall opposite the entrance, or maybe something to do with these columns. So I think I'm going to have Talls roll a mage. Again, a review of the system. Talls has 3 stats: quick, flashy, and mage. Just a d6 as the stat for mage. And one thing I haven't mentioned yet is when I roll a stat to see, what kind of outcome I can expect from a character's efforts in a scene, I'm also going to roll a fudge die, actually, as well, or a fate die, whatever you want to call it. And that's a d6 that has 2 negative sides, 2 neutral sides, and 2 positive sides. That's not going to really give me anything concrete, but it will help me get a sense of whether or not the character's successful in what they're doing. If there's something flavorful in the space, is it good for me? Is it bad for me? Or is there really not much at all? Let's roll this for Talls. First roll of the campaign. Let's see how we do. Terribly. So I rolled a 2 on her mage stat, which is a failure. If anything above a 2 on any dice roll is a success, but with the 2 itself, that's going to hurt. Not only is it a failure, she's not going to really be able to figure out anything that she's investigating here. There's going to be no signs that she can see. But also, the mage die drops down to a d4 for the moment. Not good. Not good at all. All right, so the mage die drops from a d6 to a d4 for the moment. I also rolled a negative in addition to the failure. So, Talls is... Something's going on with Talls. I don't know. We'll see what happens. Otherwise, I was also going to... I have Deadlock as well. And being a scout... definitely think that there's some similar investigation. Probably Talls and Deadlock work from time to time together to figure out, is there a mechanism here, or is there something else that we can do? So I have a d6 clever for Deadlock, so I'm going to roll that for him along with the fate die again. Let's see what we get. The exact opposite die roll. We get a 6 and a positive sign on the fate die. Great. Okay, so Deadlock's not going to be in bad shape. And in fact, Deadlock's probably going to be able to figure out what's going on in this space by examining both these pillars and the large compass rose. Let's take a look at the GM information here. The compass rose shows north pointing up, east pointing right, south pointing down, and west pointing left. So that makes sense. That is what a compass would show, as you would expect. The stewards investigate the space. And again, that's Deadlock, that's Talls, the 2 of them trying to figure out what's going on. They have found that the carved pillars can be turned to face either the center of the room or the corresponding wall. By manipulating the pillar on the right of the room so that the image of the Spherian crest faces toward the right wall, and the pillar on the left so that the crest faces the left wall, a trapdoor leading to a descending staircase is revealed. If the PCs get stumped, well, I was lucky. The PCs did not. The stewards themselves did not get stumped. However, the way that the scene plays out is Deadlock is obviously the one that figures out how to manipulate the pillar on the right so that the image of the crest does face the right wall, and the pillar on the left so the crest faces the left wall. So as he is coordinating that, Talls is standing right in the middle of the vestibule, and that trap door, sure enough, that opens up right under her feet, and she goes rolling down that staircase, and it just takes a bunch of bumps and bruises, but maybe more so worse off than anything else, a bump and bruise to her ego. Because Deadlock, as the scout, once again showing his prowess, feels like his motivation of power. This squad needs me. What would they do without me? That's an internal thought, I'll say for now. I think he may be a little bit sneakier and clever than to make that boast out loud. But that's what he's thinking. We have Talls tumbling down the staircase. The mage is definitely leading the party, front of the marching order. And Sarge will just give Sax a quick tap on the shoulder and get her moving. And the three of them quickly try to chase down Talls before she gets too far ahead of them into this wizard's home. Clearly, you don't want to get too far ahead and be isolated in a wizard's home. That's a recipe for disaster, so they avoid that. So they've gotten to the bottom of the stairwell or the staircase, and now they come to a new room. This chamber is populated by 3 15-foot tall stone statues, each with a circular cavity bored through the chest. Carved around the circular cavity are the 9 outwardly pointing triangles of the Spherian crest. Each statue points a solitary finger in a different direction, and along each statue's pointing arm is a unique, faintly etched runic phrase. To the west, there lies a pathway leading down a long, dark corridor towards some faint, distant luminescence, and to the north is a locked wooden door. Whew, boy, that's a lot of description. What strikes me first in this space are these statues, and my first instinct is always to assume at all times all statues will become animated and try to kill me. That's my general, my general existence is avoid statues. Don't get too close. So these statues have the triangles around this opening in their center cavity. So definitely that Spherian crest is on display here. It's still an important part of it. All of the statues are pointing in a different direction. On their arm, where they're pointing, is a unique, faintly etched runic phrase. It doesn't describe here without some investigation. It looks like just peeking ahead a little bit what those phrases are. So there's definitely going to be some interest in that. So to the west of here, so if we're looking at a map, that's to my right. Let me peek ahead to the map. There's no compass on the map itself. Well, that's tricky. Okay, yeah, that is to the west. Okay, so then there's a hallway to my immediate left. And that is a long, dark corridor leading towards some faint, distant luminescence. And then there's a hallway as well to the north. Well, there's a locked wooden door, excuse me. I don't know if there's a hallway to the north, but there is a locked wooden door that maybe would give me some interesting things behind it as well. At this point, I've got the 4 characters, and I think what I'm going to do is have them split up, because that's the best idea. I'm going to have them split into 2s. One of the duos is going to be working on the door to the north to investigate that. They'll do some listening to it and try to maybe jiggle a handle, see if it's locked. If it's not locked, let's see if we can open it. So that's going to be, I'm going to say that's going to be Sarge and Sax. So the 2 of them, they weren't really active in the last space, but the 2 of them are going to be investigating that door. Meanwhile, I'm going to have Talls and Deadlock start to make their way a little bit down the room. We're going to down the hallway to the west, excuse me, that darkened hallway. We're going to actually ignore the statues. We're going to see. We're going to ignore the statues to begin with. Maybe they're nothing at all. Maybe I should not be ignoring them, but we'll find out. Let's have Sarge. Sarge has careful as their main approach, and I think that's actually an astute approach to take when examining this door. So I'm going to roll for Sarge a d8 and the fate die. Let's see what we get. A 4, but a negative. Sarge will be able to investigate this wooden door successfully, but if there's some challenging aspect of it or in the room itself, Sarge is unaware. Sarge is not going to be picking up on that. The other thing, I don't think I'm going to have a roll at this point yet for the other duo. For Talls and Deadlock, I think they're just going to be maybe not really entirely leave the room and wait to see if the door to the north, what kind of situation there is. Looking now at the description, the northern door can be forced open or broken down with a DC 8 strength check. Obviously, I don't have that. That's not really an applicable stat, but that gives me some sense that it's a pretty low strength check. It can be knocked down pretty easily. That's all there is to that. So for the door, I mean, it leads to another area. That tells me that. Yeah, I think Sarge is just gonna knock the door down, just destroy it. Having rolled successfully, and I think the negative is that the door will in fact be destroyed and will not be able to be closed again. Not always what you want, and also they're already starting to vandalize this wizard's home. Might also not be what you want. But sure enough, that's what happens. They break the door down in all of their careful efforts. Having been distracted by that, by that excitement, Talls, I think, as the mage, might actually take more of an interest in these statues before they leave the room. I think I'll have Talls roll. She's already down to a d4 on mage, but that's kind of the appropriate stat for her to be rolling, or for her to have as her approach. Yeah, quick and flashy does not apply. So let's roll. I could roll a d4 for her mage stat. I can also roll any of the approaches, always on a d4, if they don't have a higher number. I'm going to stick with the mage stat. So this is now where I'm starting to already get a little risky with my dice rolls, but we'll roll a d4 and the fate die. Oh, I got a 3. I got a 3 and a positive, so that's lucky. Talls keeps her d4 mage die for now, and she starts to investigate the statues. All right, so it would be a 15 difficulty check, intelligence check to decipher the inscriptions. I'm going to say, because I got a success and the bonus, the plus on the fate die, that she is able to make out the details here. So statue 1 is pointing downward toward the middle of the room, and its inscription reads, "The light of day shines upon its supplicants." Statue 2 is pointing to statue 1, and its inscription reads, "The light of day shines upon my brother." Oh boy. All right, we have a riddle in the works here. Statue 3 is pointing west towards that hallway that we had scouted just a little bit. Its inscription reads, "The light of day gives way through the dark of night." Very spooky. Okay, so we have one pointing towards the middle of the room for supplicants, one pointing towards that first one for my brother, and then one pointing down that western hallway through the dark of night. I would say that that's pretty much that. Talls will take note of those things. As a mage, she is carrying scrolls, magic charms, I'm sure some kind of journal, notebook of sorts, so she's able to capture those notes. Yeah, I think they're going to start next time, because actually our time together is done for now. We're going to leave this room. We're going to head north through the busted down door, and we'll be picking it up with section 1-3, the stone discs. Ooh, spooky. All right. Well, we made it through the intro, the first 2 rooms. We'll see how it goes from here. I'm starting to figure out what I like, what I don't like. Not sure where to go from here, but we're gonna give this full adventure a shot and see how it feels before we make any drastic changes or decisions. So appreciate you very much for listening, and we will talk again soon.